Alright, everyday. Today on Funny News, Jeanne Shaheen had a little oopsie, well, a really big oopsie the other day on Twitter. I don't think that she necessarily put this tweet out herself. I think it might have been like one of her staffers tweeting for her, because she's busy being the senator from New Hampshire. By the way, New Hampshire, are you doing okay? Because didn't the New Hampshire House yesterday defeat a bill that would have actually allocated money for homeschooled parents, for homeschooling parents? And establish that, yes, indeed, if they're doing the role of an educator, that they should at the very least be exempt from education-related taxation or something like that. And are you all right? Because you got the Free State movement on one end, but then somehow this is your senior state senator. Anyway, Jeanne Shaheen made a tweet. We'll just describe it to her and assume she did write the tweet, which makes it 10 times funnier. And was quoting Ben Franklin. And, of course, Ben Franklin famously said, "A democracy, if you can keep it," when queried about the kind of government. Oh, wait. He didn't say that. That's not the quote. "A republic, if you can keep it," is the actual quote, when queried about the form of government that the United States would be. So, at the time, originally in the framing of the country, it wasn't entirely clear what direction would be gone off in. George Washington could have become a king. They could have had like a monarchic parliamentary system like they had back in Britain. You got to realize they were used to that system. They were not used to a republican system of government. The main gripe, originally, which they were addressing prior to the war going hot over disarmament, quite literally, at Lexington and Concord, prior to that, it was mainly the grievance that the government was levying taxes and regulations on people in the New World, but they didn't have representation in Parliament. And so it would have made total sense for them to say, you know, we'll create our own monarchy. We're splitting off. We'll find a suitable king that presumptively would be one of the founding fathers, I mean George Washington or Thomas Jefferson or Ben Franklin or something, and we'll have a parliamentary system of government in which you have like a prime minister thing going on. That would have been more natural to them. They went more radical by establishing a non-monarchic system, having just broken away from monarchy. People, especially in New England, ironically enough, people had no problem with the monarch. And in fact, oftentimes, it wasn't the fucking monarch that they had a problem with at all, it was the parliament. This is an interesting time in world history. It's fascinating. You should study more about the subject, preferably from a non-woke textbook. Apparently, Jeanne Shaheen doesn't have access to one. Democracy, as understood by the founders, these were Enlightenment-era intellectuals, was a bad thing. Direct democracy was an evil. These people had read Plato, of course. They understood that it was destabilizing and did not largely work. You do have to have a representative function if you're going to incept a state at all and continue to function for any length of time. On touching on Plato, of course, the idea of the republic in its sort of early incarnations as at the time, the idea of the republic, in my opinion, my analysis of it, this is not Plato's words, he identified that there was a sort of cyclical nature within governments. They tended to start off in a meritocratic system and labeled a democracy. So the people that are the best and brightest, the most able to lead, the bravest, etc., the most intelligent, are the ones that are incepting a state, they're leading it. Over time, as people want more of it for themselves, it devolves into a democracy. So democracy in that sense is more like the direct democracy in ancient Greece or something like that. The direct democratic system is a step away from meritocracy. And he praises some of the aspects of the decadence, actually, and culture. Well, you'll never see so many colorful robes, and everyone just has their own flair and does their own thing. The problem is that the corrupt element of society then tends to take hold, and it transforms into an oligarchy. Yeah, rule of the few. The oligarchy is the result of people who aren't meritocratic in the sense of like a democracy. So people who are upright, they're doing their job, they're trying their best, they care about their country. Now you've got people who are skilled, they're intelligent, but they're shrewd, and they're very self-serving. This devolves it further. Eventually, it narrows down to one dude called a tyrant and becomes a tyranny, a dictatorship effectively, or something related to that. A republic does not eliminate this cyclical nature of statesmanship. What it does is it constrains it. You are still going to go through these periods, but they are constrained, especially in a constitutional system where there are some things that cannot be transgressed beyond. which is why the Uniparty is trying to rip apart every aspect of the Constitution on a regular basis, because power necessarily seeks to not constrain itself. It seeks to expand. It seeks to grow. Biggest way they've done this is the creation of the bureaucratic state, by the way. Bureaucratic agencies are incepted, sometimes with a good purpose on paper, and then they're endlessly increased, and they are given wide latitude to do what they want because they influence the corporations and banks that donate to the politicians. So right now, I would argue we're in the oligarchic period, or close to it. Anyway, Jeanne Shaheen's misquote is dire because of the lack of basic understanding. Number one, it's not the real quote. You're not going to find that particular quote that she's referencing anywhere because Ben Franklin never said it. Secondly, in the context of Ben Franklin using the term republic or democracy, they are further apart. I mean, in the modern sense, sometimes we use them interchangeably. Small d democracy, so representative democracy. But it's more properly termed a constitutional republic. It's not a democracy. The democratic function largely is related, except at the local and state level, where, you know, a state under the 10th Amendment has the ability to hold a referendum or something like that. It's fine. Beyond that, it's basically just electing the people who are going to lead you. Again, that process is still subject to the same whims of the population and still cycles through those 4 points, etc., as I explain, but it is in a more constrained fashion. Jeanne Shaheen, therefore, is double wrong. The context and the term are both false. The United States does not fall under the moniker of democracy as Ben Franklin would have understood the term. It's sort of like when people don't linguistically understand the term militia. Jeanne Shaheen probably believes that too. She probably would believe, because she's a Democrat, that the militia refers to the U.S. military or possibly to the National Guard or something like that. But it doesn't. It refers explicitly to everything other than those things. It explicitly relates to the entire able-bodied population of the age of majority capable of fielding arms. The term well-regulated, modern parlance, we would look at it as an archaicism. You can look up that term too. The archaic usage, which would have been understood by the founders when they were writing the Constitution, of course, was that to well-regulate something meant to have it well-functioning. So the militia, which is the people, as a military force to be mustered up potentially in time of need, should have proper arms, should have proper everything. In modern sense, that means that people probably should have more machine guns and cannons and so forth, artillery. It doesn't extend to nukes. I've explained that separately, but we'll get into that another time. I'll explain it maybe on a live stream or something. Somebody sends a super chat. The misunderstanding of language is just as perverse as the fact that there was a willful misquoting of one of the main figures of the continental period of the early United States. Because the quote does not exist. He never used the term democracy because he would never have done so because of his understanding of what democracy versus republic actually represented. She got massively ratioed on this. The tweet has been removed, but it's archived in the description, of course, and just really, really funny overall. That's about all. Peace out.